Hi everyone. So in this video demonstration, I'm going to show you a program in Marie Assembly that is able to determine if the user input is an odd or even number. So let's first define our terms. An even number is any integer that is divisible by 2. So meaning if you divide that number by 2, the remainder should be 0. And that includes 0, since 0 divided by 2 is 0. While an odd number refers to any integer which if you divide it by 2, it should have a remainder. So before we start displaying how this is accomplished in Marie, let's first take a look at how that particular problem is solved in the C language. So in a C program, that is easily solvable using this code right here. So you see here that we have an if-else condition. We have number modulo 2 is equal to 0, or if the number is divided by 2 and doesn't have any remainder, that number is an even number. Otherwise, that's an odd number. So the problem with converting this code into Marie is that Marie does not have this modulo operator. It only has addition and subtraction. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and mimic this behavior by simply subtracting this 2 value to our number until it reaches 0. If it reaches the value -1, meaning that number is odd. Otherwise, if it reaches 0, that number is even. So let's start with the demonstration. Let me just open my Marie compiler. Alright, so before we discuss the code, I'd like you first to see how the output would be displayed, or how the final output would be running. So let's first load the file, the final output, which is this odd or even string .max, and then let's try to run it with a sample value. So I'm going to write here 4, which is an even number. So I'm going to press enter. All right, so let's change this from decimal to ASCII. So it displayed even. So let's try another value. Um, let's have a big odd number. So let's say 33, for example. You will notice that the bigger the number, the longer the operation takes, because it subtracts 2 from that value up to this, after it reaches either 0 or -1. So here you can see it printed the odd here in the output, meaning 33 is an odd number. All right, so let's have one last example. Let's try a bigger value. So let's reload this one. So let's say I'm gonna have here an even number. Let's say 68. As you see, it's taking longer and longer time as we input bigger values. So it says here 68 is an even number. All right, so let's proceed with our code. All right, so let's proceed with dissecting our code. So first, we set the origin to 100, and then we ask the user to enter any decimal. Then we will store that decimal to variable num, which is declared and initialized here below, together with some other variables like this 0, which is a constant, 1 and 2, which are also constant. Okay, we also have here num. ITR and index, and the other remaining variables are used for displaying the string even and odd. So as you may know, Marie does not have the capability to directly display string or characters. So it uses the ASCII. We can use ASCII to display our string. So for example, hex 45, that's capital letter E in ASCII. And then hex 76 is small letter V. Then 65 is E, 6E is N. Null character here is to tell our loop above that we have reached the end of the characters and to stop printing the string. You will notice that we have two strings here. One is to print the even number, or rather to print the even string. The other one is to print the odd string. All right. So after storing the value to num, we will proceed to our first condition. So this condition here would simply check if the value in the accumulator is equal to 0. So again, if the skip condition is true, meaning if the value in the accumulator is 0, it will ignore the next line. So it will not go to the next line. Instead, it will proceed to the line after that. So say for example, I'm going to write here, if the user for example enters 0, and we all know 0 is an even number since 0 divided by 2, that's 0. So not having any remainder. So 0 is the smallest even number. So say for example, if the user entered 0, so it's true. So again, if it's true, it will ignore the next line and it will proceed with this even number or even jump to the even block, which is simply this block right here, which will print the string even. We will discuss this line in a while. But for the meantime, let's say for example, we've entered a different value like 4 for example. So skip con 400. So it will check if the value in the accumulator is 0, which is currently 4. So 4 is not 0, so meaning this condition is false. So it will go to the next line. So it will proceed to the next line, jump to neg label. So this is the neg label. So the neg label will simply check if that value is less than 0. So if it reaches a negative value, that means that the number is an odd number. So here we have another skip condition, which is skip con 000, which will check if the value is less than 0. So say for example, from the previous input, which is 4, 4 is not less than 0. So meaning this condition is false and it will go inside the next line, which is jump check. So jump check here will simply subtract 2 from our AC, and then we'll store that new value to num, and then we'll go back to this label con here at the top. So say for example, we have here 4. Okay, so that's 4 minus 2. So this becomes 4 minus 2. The value of AC, which is the result of 4 minus 2, is 2 will be stored to num. And then here, we will go back to the condition above. So again, in here, it will check if the value in the AC is 0. So currently, it's not 0, it's still 2. So meaning this condition is still false. Okay, thereby going to this line after that. So it will go to jump neg or this neg block, which will again check if that value is less than 0. So again, 2 is not less than 0, so this is false. So it will again go to this particular line. So in here, it will perform again the subtract by 2. So the current value of accumulator is 2 minus or subtracted by 2, that becomes 0. So next, it will go to that this line right here, which is jump con, going back to this block here above. So again, it will check if the value in the accumulator is 0. And this time, the value in the accumulator is 0. So this one is true. And if the skip count is true, it will ignore the next line. So meaning this line here will not be executed. Instead, it will proceed to the next one. It will go to jump even, which is this particular line right here, designed to print the string even declared here below. So let's take a look at this um, line. So first, we need to load the base. The base is simply where the even string is stored in our memory. So in here, so the even base is stored at 12D. So that means on the line after that, on 12E, it should have this string 1. This is where string 1 should be located. So what this one does is that it will load the ITR declared here, initially as 0, and then it will store that to our index. So that's the str plus the index that will be loaded into our AC. And then we will be clearing our AC. Then we will get the value of our ADDR, and we will check if the condition is 0. So meaning if we have reached this particular null character here. So if we have not yet reached that null character, we will proceed with this um, another loop which I called do e or do even to print even. So what this one will do is it will display the output in the ADDR, which is simply the value stored in our index, which is currently this hex 45 capital letter E. All right. So after that, it will go back to the even block, which is here located above. It will do the same process. So basically, what this one does, it will display this line right here, line by line. So it will display E, V, E, and N until it reaches the null character. All right, so that's for displaying the even number. So now let's try and check if we have, let's say, 7. So first, let me first clear these values here. All right, so first, it will check if the value in the AC, which is 7. So first, it will check if the value in the AC, which is currently 7, is equal to 0. So 7 is not equal to 0, so meaning this condition is false. So this one will be executed. It will go to this block block right here. It will check if the value in the AC is less than 0. In this case, it's 7. In this case, it's 7. 7 is not less than 0, so this condition is false. So it will perform the check. So it will do subtract by 2 to our AC. So AC currently having 7 minus 2. Then it will store the result to num. 7 minus 2 is 5. And then it will go back to the condition. So again, the same process would be repeated. So until we have 5 minus 2, that's 3. 3 minus 2, that's 1. So it should stop right when we have this um, values here. So when 7 reaches 1, and it goes back to here to the check. So 1 minus 2, that's a negative value. So that's negative 1. When we go back to the condition, so here condition skip con 400, check if the AC is 0. So negative 1 is not equal to 0. So again, this is false. So it will execute this jump neg. So jump neg again will check if the value in the AC is less than 0. So this time, it's negative 1. A negative 1 is less than 0. So therefore, this is true. So if skipcon is true, it will ignore the next line. So this line here will not be executed. Instead, it will proceed with the next line after that. So jump odd. So meaning 7 is an odd number and it will go to this block right here. So you will notice we have a separate block for displaying odd. We have odd and do O or do odd to print the odd number. So again, the same concept with even the even string. It will print each of these characters line by line until a null character is reached. And when the null character is reached over here, it will proceed with, it will not execute the next line and instead it will go to the end line. Okay, so that's how you determine if an input is odd or even in Marie. So that's it for this demonstration. Thank you everyone for watching.